yate hridaya kuhara madhye kevalam brahmamatram yaham aham niti sakshat atmarupena bhati hridhi vishamanasa swam Chilvata Majjata Pavana Chalana Rudha Atmanishtu Bhavan Deham Mranmayavat Jadatmakam Aham Buddhirna Tasyastyato Naham Tattata Bhava Shukti Samai Siddhatma Sadbhavata Oham Bhavayuta Kuto Varadhiya Drishtatma Nishtatmana Soham Spurtitaya Arunachala Shivaha Purno Vibhati Swayam Soham Spurtitaya Arunachala Shivaha Purno Vibhati Swayam. The more here. In this, the Thursday Satsangh from Ramanacentre for Learning. As usual, we'll be reading from the work Guruvachaka Kovai by Muruganar Swamigal. We'll be reading 2 verses. Each verse reading will be followed by a short meditation on the meaning of the verse, and that will be followed by a 10-minute practice of Atma Vicharan. After these 2 verse readings, meditation on meaning, and the 2 Atma Vicharan practice sessions are completed, there will be a summing up by our President, Dr. Sharadaka, and that will be followed by an offering of Sri Ramanastotram. The chanting will be by Vaibhavji and Pratnama. Today we have Manjunath and Sudhaji with us. So Manjunath will be offering the flowers. We start with the first verse, 343. This is from the segment Investigation into Truth. The other 2 segments are meditation on the truth and experience of the truth. This 343 verse we find in the sub-segment Limitless Vision. Limitless Vision. For jnanis who have realized the self, by diving deep within themselves, there is nothing else to be known. For the jnanis who have realized the self, by diving deep within themselves, there is nothing else to be known. Why? Because their tendency to identify with the form has ceased, and they have become the formless consciousness, the reality. For the jnanis who have realized the self, by diving deep within themselves, there is nothing else to be known. Why? Because their tendency to identify with the form has ceased, and they have become the formless consciousness, the reality. Now, for the jnanis who have realized the self, in terms of practice, it means who have removed their ego, removed their separate identity from the ever-present self. Bhagavan reiterates many times that self-realization itself is a misnomer, because self is always real. It is the unreal that has been transcended. The plane of unreality has been transcended by the jnani. So their ego is no more. That's what comes in the second part. For the jnanis who have realized the self, how they realize the self, the verse clarifies, by diving deep within themselves. While saying, who is Arunachala in the Yoga Marga, in the third verse in Arunachala Pancharatnam, Bhagavan says, Veli Vidayam Vittu Vilangu Arunesa. The limitless consciousness, the infinite vision, the limitless vision, the Arunachala is something who does not have anything outside. In Tiruvachakam also it is said, who is Shiva? Shiva does not have anything outside, therefore he is free of all malam. When there is an outside, there is an impurity. When everything is inside, as Edutachan is supposed to have said, Edutachan, I think that account is related by Bhagavan in talks. It's in an incident that happens in a Kerala temple, that this great one, it appears he was carrying some fish inside his coat while going inside the temple, and somebody detects it and makes it be brought out, and the one in charge there, they come and condemn the great one. Why do you pollute this place like this? Then the great one says, while it was inside, it was all right. It is you who asked it to be brought out. So when everything is self-contained, there is no malam. So that is what? How to find that which cannot be found outside? Whenever there is an outside, there is malam. Whenever there is a separateness, I am separate from you, that is impurity. Whenever I find something outside of me, there is this possibility of impurity. Therefore, where can purity, the limitless vision, be found and held? Only within. Therefore, it is said, the jnani finds or realizes the self or removes the false ego, separateness, only by diving deep within. And for jnanis who have realized the self by diving deep within themselves, there is nothing else to be known. Tannayalar anniyam ondrum ariyar. For the jnani, there is nothing other than the self. Aridarkum, arivittarkum, anniyam endrai avirvad. The self-luminous self is so self-resplendent that to reveal it to, or to be revealed by, there is nothing apart from the self. Aridharkum, arivitharkum, tannai andri anniyam ondrum illada. Avirvadal தான் அறிவாகும் பாழன்றறி. That is one of the உள்ளது நாற்பது verses where the self luminosity of the self makes it a state where there is nothing apart from it to know. Because by diving deep within themselves, then there is nothing else to be known. Why is there nothing else to be known? Because their tendency to identify with the form. Whenever the form raises as I am having this thought, they would have removed both the thought which appears apart from the I and the I by holding the one which is deeper than the I or holding the I. Therefore, in the inner journey also, what would have been the journey is that the tendency to identify with the I thought, the tendency to identify with the form is completely erased in self-realization. Uruvam தானாயின் உலகு பரமற்றம். உருவம் தான் அன்றேல் உவற்றின் உருவத்தை கண்ணுறுதல் எவன் கண்ணலார் காட்சி உண்டோ கண்ணதுதான் அந்தமில்லா கண்ணாமே. Once again, உள்ளது நாற்பது. Only when I identify myself with the form, I falsely attribute form to X, Y, or the whole world or God. When I don't identify with the form and I have now in the limitless vision of the self, what else how can I behold anything with form other than this light? And how to behold? Is there a method? All thoughts having been removed, all forms having been removed, there is no way I can find anything else other than this self. Only when I identify with the limited form, then I limit the other also. I limit the scene. The scene arises and I limit, yes, this is this person, that is this person. My deity is of this form. Whereas when with Bhagavan's grace, which is the self, one removes all identity with one's own form, then that itself is the simultaneous vision of both the world and the God. There are no two visions. The act of removal of one's own identity with the form is itself the simultaneous vision of the reality of the world and reality of God. In one stroke, Bhagavan gives the Brahmastram, where Kevalam Brahma Matram Ahamahamiti Sakshat Atma Rupena Bhati is realized. The self alone shines as I. Therefore, Bhagavan says in Who Am I? The Jiva is nothing but the self. The world is nothing but the self. God or Ishvara is nothing but the self. The self alone is. That is the limitless vision. Therefore, the Jnani has nothing apart from the self to see. Why? Because they have the tendency, their tendency to identify with the form has ceased. And they have become the formless consciousness, the reality. That's why Bhagavan says, if you realize that you are Vishnu, then the truth that Sarvam Vishnu Bhyam Jagat will be understood very easily, because in that purity of vision, you cannot see any impurity at all. It is the Sarva Vyapi alone who is seen and realized and abided in. The direct path to abiding this jnanam is Atmauccharan. And Bhagavan says, whenever a thought appears apart from you, understand that is malam. That is the impurity that arises as though something outside and apart from you is there to be achieved. To dive deep into the I, one has to let go of that thought and inquire for whom is this thought. The answer will always be, this thought has appeared for me. And Bhagavan says, inquire who am I. With repeated practice of taking this I to its source, Bhagavan assures one definitely removes the false I and abides as the formless self. Till such abundance is realized to be natural, one should make the effort of letting go of the impurity of a thought that appears apart from us and hold the eye and take it to the source with the quest who am I. With Bhagavan's immense grace, which has brought us to this Atma Vicharam, let us sit in practice for 10 minutes. Is Vaibhavji available?
Yes, sir.
You could
I'm
help us
set
out
the
in
time.
timing? Yeah, thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes.
to read the second verse. Revathi has selected for us verse number 888. This is in the third segment, the final segment, experience, anubhavam of the truth. And the sub-segment it falls under is the self is eternally realized. The self is eternally realized. Verse number 888. There is a story by Kanakaman from Cherished Memories. So we read the verse and read the story. Verse 888. That the Brahman is all Purna. That the Brahman is all, it is Purna. This, the world, is also all. That Brahman is all. Purna. This, the world, is also Purna. Even when all merges with the all. With the Purna merges with Purna, that all indeed remains as all. The Purna remains as the Purna. Even when the Supreme All separates from the All, that which remains is the All. So it is from the verse from Isavasya Upanishad. Om, that is full, that is Purna, this is Purna. This fullness has been projected from that fullness. When this fullness merges in that fullness, all that remains is fullness. So it is Purnam Ada, Purna Idam. From there, one of you has to help me in completing that verse. Who wants to take that? You can on yourself and complete that verse.
Purna Purnamudakshate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashyate.
Now, that is the verse. When all is removed from all, what remains is the all. The all, the infinite vision is not at all touched by the relative happenings. Anything you remove from this one, that is also full. What is added on, that is also full. Speech is full, the sight is full, the taste is full, the touch is full, the fragrance is full, everything is full, that is full, this is full. Therefore, there is no jiva, there is everything is purnam. Soham spurti arunachala shivaha purna vibhati swayam. He shines as everything. The self-luminosity means everything is there in that self-luminosity. It is the simultaneous fulfillment of all desires. All desires that can ever be thought of, ever be imagined, ever be added on. The realization of the self is the simultaneous fulfillment of all desires. It is the simultaneous fulfillment of all duties too. What is a duty? Duty is a higher form of mature desire, which puts aside other unnecessary desires. That the Atma Jnanam, the Soham Spurti Taya Arunachala Shiva Purna Vibhati Swayam, that Purna Vastu is the simultaneous fulfillment of all duties. Kritya Mastikim Swastitim Yataha. What is left for one to do when abiding in the self-luminous self? As there is only I, na. When there is no other, what is left for such a one to do or fulfill? I'll read the verse again. That Brahman is all, is Purnam. This the world is Purnam also. Even when the Purnam merges with the Purnam, or Purnam is taken away from the Purnam, that Purnam indeed remains as all. Even when the Supreme Purnam separates from the Purnam, that which remains is Purnam, 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 Purnam alone. Now, Kanakammal's story. This is a beautiful story. Now I recall that, so I'll not spoil. Will be a spoil sport and tell it ahead. I'll read the story slowly. It's a very nice one. The following story is narrated by Kanakammal. It was a festival day, must have been Ganesh Chaturthi, and modakams were being prepared in the ashram. Modakam is a sweet prepared in South India as an offering to Lord Ganesha. On that particular day, Shantamma, Sampurnamma, Shankaramma, Lokamma, and others were engaged in making modakams. See what all names they have. Shantamma, Sampurnamma, Shankaramma, Lokamma. All of them are Purnavastus already. Each of them had a portion of the Purnam, the jaggery and coconut mixture in a plate. And they were molding the rice flour into cups and filling the cups with the Purnam. They would have actually put the rice flour for steaming, and that mold they will prepare in the hand, and inside the mold they will keep the Purnam and once again steam it. They would have cooked the rice into a dough, and inside the dough the Purnam will be kept and it will be steamed. Each of them had a portion of the Purnam, the jaggery and coconut mixture. It is called Purnam, the jaggery and coconut mixture which they would have cooked together. Each of them had that Purnam in a plate, and they were molding the rice flour into cups and filling the cups with this Purnam. Each of the ladies worked at their own pace because that mold making is an art. It is said that my grandmother would make 2 modakams simultaneously in 2 hands. In the 2 hands, each of the ladies worked at their own pace, and so some of them finished their portion of Purnam faster than others. On his way to the cowshed, Bhagavan entered the kitchen and stood for a few minutes, watching the ladies at their work. The conversation included remarks like, "My Purnam is over. You have so much Purnam with you. Why don't you give me some of your Purnam? And oh, you don't have any Purnam left. Why don't you take some of my Purnam? And I have very little Purnam left. Please give me some more." And so on. After a while, one of the ladies got up saying, "All my Purnam is over." Bhagavan, who had been listening to the ladies' remarks, smiled at them and said, "You have all been talking about Purnam. One of you said you had too little Purnam, and the other said she could spare a little of her Purnam. One lady even remarked that all her Purnam was over. Whatever the context in which it was used, the word retained its meaning. Whether there was too much Purnam or too little Purnam or no Purnam at all, the identity of the Purnam remained unchanged. This unchanging nature is the mark of everlasting perfection. The ideal of absolute perfection is set out in the benedictory verse of Isavashi Upanishad. Thus, that is the whole. This is also the whole. The Purnam comes out of the Purnam. When you remove the Purnam from the Purnam, what remains is also the Purnam. That is the verse, the beautiful one, the story that Bhagavan, how a mundane activity. It is said that the Jnani can see only the self. So whatever is seen by him, mundane or otherwise, is all twisted to give us self-knowledge. His very presence is holy. His very presence turns our mind inside, inward. In addition to that grace, you can imagine they are working and preparing some food stuff, and Bhagavan is seeing and making this remark. Even when somebody has no Purnam, that is also Purnam. He says, the beauty of this teaching is that in Devi Kalotram, yesterday we were meditating, it is said that the still mind is Shiva, the still mind is Vishnu, the still mind is Brahma, is Kumara, is Ganesha. There is all the deities merge into the still mind. When the consciousness is still, that is all the deities put together. Then one of the questioners, they feel, "Arey, how can I aim for such a great position, such a padavi, the all-knowing padavi of the great ones?" To that, Bhagavan comes to the rescue. Not necessary. Purnamadaha Purnamidam. In as is where is condition. What you know and what you don't know, you are Purnam. You don't need to become another thing. You don't need to know one extra knowledge. As it is, when you ask, "Who am I?" it takes you to the Purna Vastu, the source. There is absolutely no need to add on to what you are. As you are, here and now, you are the Purna Vastu. Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnam. When it is removed, Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Visishyate. Even when you remove the Purnam from the Purnam, only Purnam is there. As it is. Isha Jivayor Vesha Divida Satsvabhavato Vastu Keval. Satsvabhava. In the nature of pure existence, we are all Purna Vastu. That we cannot be any other way. Therefore, Atma Vicharam blesses us as is very situation, without a single stress to add on. You should become this, and then you will become Purna. No such requirement is asked of the sadhaka. Remove the ego, erase it completely. There your Purnam is realized. With Bhagavan's immense grace, let us go towards that in sadhana and remove that which is an apparent obstruction, which is blocking our real nature, which is nothing other than the Purna Vastu. With Bhagavan's grace, let us sit in practice of Atma Vicharam for 10 minutes. Madhuji, you help us out once again.
Yes, sir. Yes, I'll do that.
Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. Namo Ramana. I request our President, Dr. Shardaka, to give the summing up remarks.
Namo Ramana. Frustrations Ramana, shining as a self in all beings. By the immense grace of that self manifest as Ramana, we have been able to meditate on his words and also to sit for 2 sessions of self-inquiry. To directly taste that Purna, the sweetness of that Purna, which we heard of in that story, and we would have wanted to taste it ourselves. And Bhagavan says the best taste of it is within, as the self, the sweetest taste of that Purna. And he has allowed us to have that sweetest taste as well in the self-inquiry session. The words of Bhagavan show us that that which is complete has to be fully complete. That fullness cannot have anything apart from it. Because if, as it pervades everything, everything has to be full. If something can move away from it, then that is not full. If there has to be a space, there has to be a time in which something can move away. But when it is fullness, nothing can move away from it. Nothing can be apart from it. Therefore, what seems to be a part also has to be only full. That nothing can be apart from it, nothing can be away from it. I often narrate one story of Akbar and Birbal, where Akbar was being praised by all his courtiers to the point that each one wanted to outdo the other, and one finally said, "Jahanpana, you're greater than God." Akbar was pleased to hear it, but then he knew in his heart that it is not the truth. Nonetheless, he asked Birbal, "Is this true?" Now, Birbal cannot be the one to say it is not true. So he said, "Of course, Jahanpana, it is true." But Akbar did not leave it at that. He said, "Birbal, you have to prove it to me." Then Birbal said, "If there is something one X can do, which Y cannot do, is not X greater than Y?" Then Akbar said, "Yes." So there is something, Jahanpana, which you can do, which God cannot do. He said, "What is that, Birbal?" Well, if God wants to banish someone from his kingdom, he cannot do so, Jahanpana, but you can do so, he said, thereby making Akbar understand the limitless nature of God and his own limitation as well. So Nandakumarji also sometimes tells us that self has to be available. It cannot go away. It is helpless. It is just available. It is just there. It is just in all its fullness. There can be nothing ever apart from it. But then why the sense of limitation that was given to us in the earlier verse by Bhagavan? The tendency to identify, the tendency to divide, and then to identify with something that is external, that is not. When I say external, obviously I don't feel it is the self. Though I may at that time of identification say it's the self, it is external. this division and then the identification, the tendency to identify with the external, is the reason why we lose sight of that fullness that ever is ever available, and is pervading everything at all times. In fact, everything is within that, says Bhagavan in Arunachala Pancharatnam. So this tendency to identify is there. It's very beautiful to see that this tendency is also, in a sense, full. In the sense that it's not ever a partial tendency. Though, translating from Indian languages, there is a tendency to say that, there is somebody has too much ego, tumba ahankara. Avanukku romba ahankaram jasti. Somebody has too much ego, somebody has less ego. But is it possible to have too much or less ego? The very tendency to identify with an object is the ego, Bhagavan says. So, no matter what the identification is, it is the presence of ego. Indraham enum ninevenil piravundrum indru. Bhagavan says in Ashtakam, if there is no I thought, then nothing else can arise. The fact that something else arises means this tendency to identify with an object is present. And that's why again and again we find Nandakumarji emphasizing in a gentle way that when Bhagavan tells us to do the Nama Japa, or when he tells us to look at the Chidakasha, or a sense of consciousness that is apart from existence, even if you identify with consciousness, even if you identify with bliss, if you identify with something, then it becomes a support, it becomes a manifestation of that tendency to identify with something, and it has to be questioned. It has to be questioned until that tendency is completely removed. As Bhagavan says in Ramana Gita, nirvasanena, without any trace of any vasana of having to identify. Not just with the physical body, even a subtle concept is a body. The earth is a body. Somebody may think I am the earth, somebody may think I am the universe, somebody may think I am bliss. Subtle concept. But it's an identification. Somebody may think I am Chitakasha, still an identification. I am such. That means that such is different and I am different. There are two and I am such. In the self, there would be no such, there would be no need arising while abiding in the self to say anything about it. One cannot say, and that's why Bhagavan says it is pure silence. It is pure mauna. And the beauty of it is that because the jnani ever abides in that because everything is imbued with that, the jnani is perfectly natural. For one who is identified with an object, something appears big, something appears small, there are differences. And because of the differences, we seek to say there is no difference. But the jnani does not have to say there is no difference. The jnani can see blue as blue and red as red, the small as small and big as big. The jnani can be perfectly natural with everything because everything is imbued with that fullness for the jnani. That's why Bhagavan, in that incident also, so naturally he comes, so naturally he stands and watches the ladies in the kitchen, and they can be so natural in his presence. There is no unnaturalness at all because it is all pervaded with that which is most natural, which is the self, which is fullness, and by the grace of which all of us too will abide in that, though maybe gradually, as according to each one's skill of making the modakam, that cover the shell of the modakam, similarly each one of us may have a different timing, but each one of us will also complete our own share of Purnam at its right moment by the grace of Bhagavan. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Namo Ramana. May I request Vaibhavji and Pratnama to start the Ashtotram?
Yes, sir. Namo Ramana. भारद्वाजनाथ विरचितं श्रीरमणाष्टोत्तर शतनामावलिः अपार सच्चित् सुखवारिराशे भुवनं समस्तं गुहाहितं तं रमणं कबीरं चिन्ताविहीनं हृदि चिन्तयामि ॐ महासेन वंशेन जाताय नमः ॐ श्रीरमणाय नमः ॐ गुरवे नमः ॐ अखण्ड संविदाकाराय नमः ॐ महौजसे नमः ॐ कारणोद्भवाय नमः ॐ जगद्दितावताराय नमः ॐ श्रीभूमिनाथस्थलोस्थिताय नमः ॐ पराशरकुलोत्तंसाय नमः ॐ सुन्दरार्यतपःफलाय नमः ॐ कमनीयसुचारित्राय नमः ॐ सहायाम्बा सहायवते नमः ॐ शोणाचलमहोलीनमानसाय नमः ॐ स्वर्णहस्तकाय नमः ॐ श्रीमद्वादशान्तमहास्थले लब्धविद्योदयाय नमः ॐ महाशक्तिनिपातेन प्रबुद्धाय नमः ॐ परमार्थविदे नमः ॐ तीव्राय नमः ॐ पितृपदान्वेषिणे नमः ॐ इन्दुमौलिना पितृमते नमः ॐ पितुरादेशतः षोडशैलं प्राप्ताय नमः ॐ तपोमयाय नमः ॐ उदासीनाय नमः ॐ महायोगिने नमः ॐ महोत्साहाय नमः ॐ कुशाग्रधिये नमः ॐ शान्तसङ्कल्पसंरम्भाय नमः ॐ सुसन्दृशे नमः ॐ सवित्रे नमः ॐ स्थिराय नमः ॐ तपःक्षपितसर्वाङ्गाय नमः ॐ फुल्लाम्बुजविलोचनाय नमः ॐ चन्द्रिकासितहासश्रीमण्डिताननमण्डलाय नमः ॐ चूतवाट्यां समासीनाय नमः ॐ चूणिताखिलविप्रमाय नमः ॐ वेदवेदान्ततत्त्वज्ञाय नमः ॐ चिन्मुद्रिणे नमः ॐ विरूपाक्षगुहावासाय नमः ॐ विराजितशलाकृतये नमः ॐ उद्दीप्तनयनाय नमः ॐ पूर्णाय नमः ॐ रचिताचलताण्डवाय नमः ॐ गम्भीराय नमः ॐ परमाचार्याय नमः ॐ सुप्रसन्नाय नमः ॐ अभयप्रदाय नमः ॐ दक्षिणास्यनिभाय नमः ॐ धीराय नमः ॐ दक्षिणाभिमुखाय नमः ॐ स्वराजे नमः ॐ महर्षये नमः ॐ भगवते नमः ॐ ईद्याय नमः ॐ भूमविद्याविशारदाय नमः ॐ विमलाय नमः ॐ दीर्घदर्शिने नमः ॐ आप्ताय नमः ॐ ऋजुमार्गप्रदर्शकाय नमः ॐ समदृशे नमः ॐ सत्यदृशे नमः ॐ सत्याय नमः ॐ प्रशान्ताय नमः ॐ अमितविक्रमाय नमः ॐ सुकुमाराय नमः ॐ सदानन्दाय नमः ॐ मृदुभाषिणे नमः ॐ दयार्णवाय नमः ॐ श्रीशूणाचलस्कन्धाश्रमनिकेतनाय नमः ॐ सद्दर्शनोपदेष्ट्रे नमः ॐ सद्भक्तवृन्दपरिवृताय नमः ॐ गणेशमुनिवृन्देन सेविताङ्घ्रिसरोरुहाय नमः ॐ गीतोपदेशसारादिग्रन्थसंक्षिप्तसंशयाय नमः ॐ वरुणाश्रममतातीताय नमः ॐ रसज्ञाय नमः ॐ सौम्याय नमः ॐ आत्मवते नमः ॐ सर्वावनिमतस्थानाम् आराध्याय नमः ॐ सर्वसद्गुणिने नमः ॐ आत्मारामाय नमः ॐ महाभागाय नमः ॐ मातृमुक्तिविदायकाय नमः ॐ विनताय नमः ॐ विनुताय नमः ॐ विप्राय नमः ॐ मुनीन्द्राय नमः ॐ पावकोज्वलाय नमः ॐ दर्शनादगसंहारिणे नमः ॐ मौनेन स्वात्मबोधकाय नमः ॐ मृच्छान्तिकरसान्निध्याय नमः ॐ स्मरणाद्बन्धमोचकाय नमः ॐ अन्तस्तिमिरचण्डांशवे नमः ॐ संसारार्णवतारकाय नमः ॐ षोडादृशस्तुतिद्रष्टे नमः ॐ हार्दविद्याप्रकाशकाय नमः ॐ अविच्युतनिजप्रज्ञाय नमः ॐ नैसर्गिकमहातपसे नमः ॐ कमण्डलुधराय नमः ॐ शूद्रकौपीनवसनाय नमः ॐ गुहाय नमः ॐ दण्डपाणये नमः ॐ कृपापूर्णाय नमः ॐ भवरोगविषग्वराय नमः ॐ स्कन्दाय नमः ॐ देवतमाय नमः ॐ अमर्त्याय नमः ॐ सेनान्ये नमः ॐ पुरुषोत्तमाय नमः ॐ श्रीरमण भगवते नमः श्रीरमणाष्टोत्तरशतनाम पूजां समर्पयामि यस्थानोररुणाचलस्य पदयोः स्मृत्याजनिं प्राप्यत दिव्यानुग्रह सुप्रवाह विवशा तादात्म्यभावं गतः त्वन्निष्ठस्वदवीरनित्यतपसा लोकान् पुनासेकराट् तस्मै श्रीरमणाय ते नमः लोकोत्तरज्योतिषे ॐ नमो भगवते श्रीरमणाय
Revati ma, you can Bharati?
Yes, Uncle. नमो 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 रमण सदाशिव प्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि नमो 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 रमण सदाशिव प्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि दर्शन सुख मंगल मुख सकल जीवहित सम्मुख ब्रह्म संघिये सदा तुष्ट सदा हृष्ट सदा शिवानंद पुष्ट परम महर्षि ब्रह्मनिष्ठ समदर्शी नमो 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 रमण सदाशिव प्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि ನಮ್ಮ ಮನವದೊಂದು ಕಾಡು ನೀನರಿತಿಹೆ ಅದರ ಜಾಡು ಹಿತವನರಿತು ನೀಡು ತೆಮ್ಮ ಕೊರೆಯ ತಣಿಸಲೈ ಬೇಡಲೆಂದು ಬಂದ ನಾವು ನೋಡಿಯೇ ತಣಿವೆವಯ್ಯ ಮೂಡಿಗಾರನೇ. ಹಿತವ ನುಡಿದು ಪೊರೆ ನಮ್ಮನು ಬ್ರಹ್ಮ ಸಂಘಿಯೇ. ನಮೋ 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 ರಮಣ ಸದಾಶಿವ ಪ್ರಭಾವರಣ ನಮೋ ಮಹರ್ಷಿ ನಮೋ ಮಹರ್ಷಿ. बोलो भगवान श्री रमण महर्षि की जय.